Hey, welcome back guys. Coming at you once again from the great outdoors, as it's too nice a day to be cooped up inside. This is a special episode for me. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of my VC intro video, which launched this channel. Never had any idea of still being here a year down the road making videos, but I want to give a special thanks to everybody that has watched, commented, subscribed. I keep doing this because of you guys and all your great support, and I've tried to support back. So thanks guys. Doing these videos led me to, after a while, led me to want to do something in maybe more of a written word format, which I'm kind of more comfortable in. So I started the Fat City blog page. I chose it on Facebook as a platform to kind of share with the community more easily. And I like to think I've put a lot of time and love into that. So extra double thanks to everybody that's checked out that page. A big goal of that was to get the page likes on Fat City up to the subscriber count on this channel and kind of get them up to the same point. And I achieved that this week, so that was a big gratifying moment. So it was a long, hard slog. I hope I've put a lot of love into that page. Definitely a lot of time. Hopefully it shows. So that is going to continue. This channel will continue, and it's been great. So on to some finds. Thrifts. I haven't been having too much luck lately, but picked up this one. Total Blind Buy. Tanya Maria. Come With Me. This is from 1983 on the Concord Jazz Picante label. She is Brazilian. It's kind of Brazilian jazz, I guess you'd call it. Very much of a bossa nova, samba flavor throughout. There's one song that by Gershwin that's more of a torch song, but she's also got definitely some funk, definitely some grooves on there, even a bit of Portuguese rap. So very enjoyable album. Glad I picked that one up. Cheap bins at the record store. Picked up Billy Cobham, Crosswinds, another one for the Billy Cobham collection. Pretty well known in the vinyl community. As is this one. This was not a cheap bin, but still pretty cheap. I think it was like $6. I'd seen this shown many times in the vinyl community, so I was glad to finally get a copy of my own. Ramsey Lewis, Sun Goddess, 1974, on Columbia. Jazz funk, for those of you that don't know it. Members of Earth, Wind and Fire right in here. The late Maurice White, Philip Bailey on there, Verdine White. Charles Stepney hanging out too. Great jazz funk album. This was another record store find, and it is Herbie Hancock, Maiden Voyage. This was, they had a sticker that it's an original stereo pressing. I'm not too sure, but it is old. It's on Blue Note. Vinyl is in excellent shape. Cover's got a bit of a split and some wear, but it was pretty cheap, under $20, which I thought was a pretty good score there. According to Discogs, the original is supposed to have a Van Gelder stamp in the dead wax, which this does not have, but it's definitely old, definitely in good shape, so I was happy to pick that up. Picked up a couple of soul jazz compilations from a friend of mine that's kind of downsizing his soul jazz collection to focus on some different things. So from him I grabbed Legidu Sisters, Afrobeat Soul Sisters. That is from 2011, Soul Jazz Records, double LP, and they were from Nigeria. They were identical twin sisters. Again, Afrobeat style, bit of funk, bit of disco even. They were very influenced by Fela Kuti, but also American soul stars like Aretha Franklin. It's very cool. They put out a series of albums through the 1970s, worked with Ginger Baker briefly in the early 70s as well, as did Fela Kuti, and immigrated to America, New York, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s, and kind of faded from the scene after that. But a very nice compilation from them. Another one from Soul Jazz, Sound of Philadelphia 2, Philadelphia Roots. I have the first one already. Again, that's a double LP, tracing the Philadelphia sound, which kind of gave rise to disco in the 70s. But a mix of like funk, soul, and even a bit of rock on here, a bit of psychedelia. You got the 3 Degrees collage opening it, which is pretty psych, pretty trippy. Very nice comp from Soul Jazz Records. Of course, Gamble and Huff and Tom Bell, kind of the big three producers in Philadelphia, but there were other ones. But the kind of the track listing and the liner notes kind of lay it out that it was this floating pool of musicians, kind of more sometimes known as MFSB, mother, father, sister, brother, who kind of created the sound and laid down the beat through pretty much all of these recordings. And actually their very first recording is on here under the name The Family. They did a cover of Sly Stone's Family Affair. Another record store find. This is one I'd had on my want list for a while. I'd had a tough time finding it. I've seen it twice before. Once was in a thrift store and it was absolutely hammered. Looked like somebody had ice skated on it. The other time was in another record store and they wanted $25 for it. And it was not in as good a shape as this copy. Had a bunch of ringware and stuff. But it is the debut album by Redbone from 1970. Double LP on Epic Records. Redbone were a Native American group. Kind of the core of it was two brothers, Pat and Lolly Vegas. I think they were from the Pacific Northwest, one of the reservations there. All Native American group, very much in a blues rock style. They were kind of involved with Jimi Hendrix in the early part of their career when this album came out. He was apparently a fan of this album. So a lot of blues rock, kind of a bit of jamminess too. Of the 3 out of the 4 sides end with long instrumental jams. If you saw the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, they had a song called Come and Get Your Love, which was featured on that soundtrack, which was as perfect a slice of early 70s AM pop as you're ever going to hear. And that was from a bit later in their career, a bit more of a pop direction they went in. You know, I got to show you some reggae. I found the Mighty Maytones at the same store as that Redbone one. This is a Canadian release. Showcase album, Tune In and Rock it's called. It's on Pioneer International. No definite year on this one, but I'm guessing very late 70s, early 80s, perhaps. Probably kind of a swan song for them, as the group kind of splintered around that time, as the lead singer, Vernon Buckley, aka Vernon Maytone, still active today. He emigrated to Canada, probably hence why this would be a Canadian album. But they're a very well-regarded roots singing trio, or duo rather. Unusually, it's quite more usual for the singing groups in Jamaica to be trios, but they were a duo. And they had a song called Money Worries, which was on either The Harder They Come or the Rockers soundtrack, one of the two. I'm forgetting right now. And did a series of albums in the 70s which were very well regarded, but have never really been reissued since. So if you want to hear some Maytones, there's kind of not a lot out there other than original pressings. So that's actually the first LP by them in my collection. I do have that Money Worries song on a 12-inch single. Also the same store. I'm starting to check this store a bit on the regular, as they seem to get some Jamaican music in. And I got various artists' compilation called Melodica Melodies. This is on the Trojan label out of England from 1981, compiled by Chris Lane, who founded Fashion Records in England, which put out a series of successful records from the 80s through into the 90s. And the melodica is kind of a joke instrument, I guess, everywhere else, but in Jamaica they actually turned it into kind of a serious instrument. It's basically kind of like a flute with keys like a keyboard on it. And of course the one who popularized it most was Augustus Pablo, who brought turned such a simple instrument into really a woozy, dubby kind of sound that they eventually called the Far East sound. It's kind of his trademark. But this is a various artists comp of different artists playing the same instrument. These are all early reggae tunes, probably late 60s, early 70s, most of them. And Augustus Pablo is on here with his big hit that established him, called Java, which was another name for that kind of exotic, mystic sound he created. But Glenn Brown also on here. I talked about him a video or two back. He played the melodica as well. Very cool comp, and somebody must have been a melodica fan, because at the same time I found this is Augustus Pablo, Rebel Rock Reggae. This is a reissue of his debut album on Heartbeat Records out of Massachusetts from 1986. The album originally came out 1974, I believe it was, This was put out to capitalize on the success of that Java song that's on that compilation. It wasn't included on this LP for some reason. I guess that was kind of the thing they did in those days. It was assumed the buyers would have the hit single already, so they'd put out the album with the other songs on it. So, classic debut LP. They put out a selection of top rhythm tracks. There's a version of the Cornelius Brother and Sister Rose's Too Late to Turn Back Now, and a couple other well-known rhythms. Augustus Pablo doing his thing on the melodica with that Far East sound that he established, which he'd go on to do on a series of albums for the rest of his career. I actually have that one on a later pressing. This is 2011, I think this came out, on the VP label out of the US. This was produced by Clive Chin, who was a childhood friend of Augustus Pablo. He was from the Chin family, who would go on to found VP Records. They would put out a series of releases in Jamaica through the 70s and immigrated to the New York area in the late 70s, I think, early 80s, founded VP, which is now the most successful and largest reggae label in the world. And the last one I picked up from that store was on VP Records. This is from 2002. It is called Old to the New. Double LP on VP Records. 2002, I remember when this came out. A number of the singles on here were very successful. They were played all over reggae radio at the time. It is by Steely and Clevie. They are a bass and drum duo, kind of like Sly and Robbie, where Sly and Robbie were at their most innovative kind of in the 70s and early part of the 80s. These two guys dominated from kind of the later 80s through the 90s. As the technology changed and the sound got more digital, more computerized, these guys were at the forefront, creating all the rhythms for various producers that they would get to voice their artists on. These guys were at the cutting edge, and again, just putting out a flood of rhythms for years. So what they put out, what do you do when you're at the cutting edge and all these guys want your current sound? They go back to the foundation and start bringing back all the classic rhythms, the classic artists from decades before, and reinventing it for a new generation. In the early 90s, I think 1994, they put out an album as a tribute to Studio One, kind of Jamaica's Motown I always refer it to, which spawned a very successful new version of Don Penn's No No No. So a few years later, they put this out kind of on a similar theme, except as a tribute to the Joe Gibbs label, which was very successful in the 70s and early part of the 80s. And what they do here is get a selection of the classic songs that came out then. Whenever possible, bring back the artists that originally did those songs and sing them over again, and usually in combination with a current artist to bring the contemporary flavor to it, which they did very, very well. And as I said, a number of these songs were played over and over again on the radio at the time. I've got this on CD, but I'd never seen the vinyl before, so I was glad to pick that up. Might even have one or two of the singles. I was buying a lot of 7-inch singles back then. So all the new music from Jamaica was still coming out on that format then. I like the very retro cover art on here. You can see that, kind of like the old Columbia labels. And cool poster on the wall there. It says King Sturgav Hi-Fi versus Kilimanjaro at Skateland, July 15th, 1979. I don't know if that actually happened, but those are two real sound systems. So Steely and Clevie, Steely I think died in 2009. This came out in 2002, so definitely a high point of their career. So that's what I've got for you today, guys. Thanks for an amazing year in the vinyl community. I've learned a lot, I've made a lot of friends, and just generally had a blast, and I look forward to the next year. Cheers, guys.